Okay, so I want to build, I've got my pedicles, if you will, on either side of this frame, but I need to come down and get the inferior articulating surface there, and I need the spinous process. So I'm going to simplify some of these faces here. I don't want quite all of this right now. So I'm going to double click and hold shift again and double click. So what I've done is I've got an edge loop. When you double click on an edge, it gives you all the edges in that loop. That's the continuous connection. So you see those orange lines are my edge loop. Now I cannot say delete them. I have to go up in here and say delete edge vertices. Otherwise I'll get vertices, the lines will go away, the edges will go away, but the vertices will be left floating on these faces, and they'll cause you a problem when you try to render. And while I'm here, I'm actually going to get rid of the one in the center there too. So I did the same thing. Now I don't have that one in the center, and I'll tell you why. That one in the center was going to be a problem. It's going to cause a seam when I try to render this and texture it. So that's why I wanted to get rid of it. So what I'm going to do, just create my inferior um, articulating surfaces, and my spinous process is I'm going to grab these faces and, you guess it, extrude them. I'll just bring them straight down. Right now I'm not even going to, well, maybe I'll just subdivide it. No, I'm not going to subdivide. I'm going to bring it straight down, because I'll tell you why. Because I need this big face here to become my spinous process. I'm sorry, yes, that's right, my spinous process. So we don't have, a real, I didn't do a drawing of the posterior view there, but it is, that spinous process is going to come down from the top. Excuse me, come down right actually from here. So we're going to need to deal with that a little bit as well. And I can't get rid of this edge, you can see, because if I did, it would start to interfere with these other. So what I'm going to do is extrude it. Bring it out and scale it, and maybe actually move it down a little bit. So I'm trying to use the side window, this lateral view, and the top view to help me figure out. Now the problem with the top view is I didn't draw it orthographically. I drew it in perspective, so that the spinous process looks that small if you look at it in perspective, but in reality, if it was orthographic, it wouldn't be that small. So really this lateral view is our chief tool here. So I'm going to hit letter G, which lets me extrude it again. I'm going to scale it, and I know it gets skinnier, so I'm definitely going to scale it. And I hit the letter G and move it again. And maybe again scale it. So I'm going between scale and move to get it positioned. Letter G again, and it comes out like, it seems like everything always has a wee bit of expansion, the bone here at the tip. So now I will scale it out a little wider and move it, and then bring it out one more time, and then scale it in, and maybe position it. Okay, so there you go. You get kind of a good feeling. Now, like I said, you don't see this kind of flat wall here when you look at the actual bones. So what we're going to have to do is well, you're going to see, but what we're going to have to do is take this edge and probably bring it forward. And actually what we probably want to do is actually take this whole face and bring it forward a little bit. And you can see what I'm looking at again now as I'm looking at my top view. It looks like I could scale that because it gets a little narrower. And maybe even bring it down just a little bit. And then take this edge and bring it up and perhaps back and scale it a little bit in. So we get kind of a, that kind of scoop, that descending plane, if you will, that you see coming off. So now we have these over here are the start of our inferior articulating surface. We can want to grab, say, face and grab these two faces. I'm sorry, not move them, we want to extrude them. So I'm moving, I'm using my side view here to let me see kind of that shape I want to be. Looks like I'm a little off, a little far posterior with that. And, if I hit the number 3, you can see things aren't quite so bad. So we will adjust this later. We'll fine tune it, in other words. Maybe get this edge right here. Now, see, I don't have the luxury now of having the instance, right? So I can't just do one side. I have to, if I want to do something symmetrically, I have to grab the two edges. So I've grabbed these two edges, and I'm just going to bring that just so it's a little thinner. Okay. So we're trying to keep, and I think we've done that. We've trying to maintain a 4 sides, quads, 4-sided or quads on all of the surfaces. We'd like to get that body, this canal, to have a little bit more of that shape, that a little more rounder. And one of the things we have to do is pull this forward. Now, I took that seam out the middle. So what I might try, I took the seam out the middle because if I just pull it right there, it's just going to pinch it. I don't want to pinch it. I want to actually create that arc. So what I'm going to do is say Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop, and from the front I'm going to add, I'm actually using the front and the top to help me add a place where I can now go and say face 1, 2, 3, and move those faces forward. Okay, so I'm getting a little more of an arc that I wanted. We're going to have to look at, again, really re-examine how to get this a little more, a little rounder. It's too flat, this posterior surface as well. So we could do the same thing. We could do an Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loops, and extrude it, but I'm not sure I want to put quite that many faces on that spinous process quite yet. So let's just hold off on that for a little bit. So let's save this. You can see I've got quite a few I've built here. Let's call this something better than that. Let's call this prototype T6. So I want to make sure I keep in mind that this is just a placeholder. Let's see what it looks like with the 3. So we've got a lot of like soft gooey stuff, but look how the canal pretty much gets pretty close to what we want. It's got a little bit of that, really got a fairly close, so we don't really need to do too much, I don't think. I was talking about I'd have to maybe work with that back wall, but I maybe don't have to. And maybe even if I expand or scale those 3 faces down there a little bit, I can get even a little more of that canal shape. So I think that looks pretty good. So we'll work on, like I said, we'll work on that when we want to get a more accurate model. But there's one thing I want you to work on before you give up on this, before you start using this as your placeholder. It's important that you know it fits with another one, with the one immediately below it. So if you duplicate it and move the duplicate either up or down, doesn't really matter. So there's got to be a space for the disk, and the inferior and superior faces have to fit. Now, I think there's a little bit, they don't slide bone on bone. There's obviously got to be some cartilage, very thin cartilage on there. So if we look at it, you see there's going to be a wee bit of a gap. But I think that's okay. I think that's not, again, for the placeholders, I think that's all we need. All right, so we just want to make sure that we have, a way of constructing this. Now, what I could do is, if you want to close that down, I think the top one, the superior articular facet is a bit thick. So I don't want to work with it much. I wouldn't want to modify it much, but the inferior one seems to be, maybe a little thin. So maybe I could grab the face here and here, and here, and pull that forward a little bit, and maybe grab this edge and just pull that edge and maybe scale it. Now I don't want to do that. I don't like the crookedness of that. Let's get rid of that duplicate and do it again. Move the duplicate up. Now we actually seem to be overlapping, but if I go to the smooth, now you'll see they're very, very much touching one another. Okay. So we're gonna work on things that will keep the structure a little more accurate. We're getting a nice roundness here, but maybe we want to kind of make that round a little bit more. We might want to play with the body. Well, one of the things you're going to find too is that there's ways of modifying this, and we're going to have to experiment. We want to maybe put another couple edges here to kind of hold this edge. So let's just leave it like that for our placeholder, and then we can scale and move these around as we need to make the 12 reference vertebra that we'll use.